Hello, my name is Jeremy Helgevold. This is my submission video for GPE104 Project 2. Before I get started on the rubric, I wanted to point out where I got my art from. For some particle effects or explosion effects and UI, I got those from user Benji. And then for most of the art, spaceship, background, planets, asteroids, I got from user Tattermand, all on opengameart.org, which is the link that has been provided in some of the resource pages on in the modules. Okay, on to the rubric. So the first thing it asks for is tank controls rotate and move forward in local space. So my player controller handles all of this. It checks for W or key code up arrow, S down, A left, D right, and forward and backward are achieved by transform position plus equals the local up times the movement speed. And then I just minus equal for backwards, and I cut the speed in half so you back up slower. Rotating takes the rotation speed set in the editor and rotates the transform around the forward vector coming out of the screen, and then minus that vector for the other direction. Next object is Game Manager Singleton. I have in my game controller, the first object is a static reference to a game controller, and in the awake function, I check if it's null and set it, otherwise I destroy it. Next item, Game Manager controls game logic, lives, spawns, game over. So yeah, my game controller controls all of that. It has all of the editor variables that a designer could set. It's got a game over boolean. The functions that control that are down here. It resets the game state if you lose a life by just destroying all the enemies, respawning or initiating the respawn, setting the ship's position back to 0, and all the stuff required. If it's actually your last life, it will quit the application, but this only happens when you run exe. This doesn't happen in the editor. So if that doesn't happen, I set a UI object to display to let you know the game's over, so you can stop playing in the editor and restart it if need be. So that's the game over. So lives and spawns. The spawns are done in the update function on the game controller. It just finds a random location and instantiates a random enemy. It has some extra logic in there to alternate where it spawns enemies, so it doesn't spawn them repeatedly in the same spawn location. But I'll get into that a little later. And lives, obviously, are just a simple max lives, and whenever we get hit down here in the reset game state, we decrement the max lives. Let's see, next item is use of on-trigger enter 2D. That happens in a lot of places, namely the projectiles for enemy or player bullets. On trigger enter, it checks the layer of whatever object it hit. If it's an asteroid or an enemy ship, we instantiate some explosions, and if the thing that fired that bullet is a player, we increase the player's score, and then since it's a bullet hitting something, we destroy both the bullet and whatever it hit. Next item is on trigger exit. Okay, so that is done mainly in the game area destruction. I just have a simple script that is assigned to the game controller. I always forget this. Yes, the game controller. So there's a script, a collider on the game controller that is the same size as the play area. So anytime on any object except for the player controllers, I have a unique case for that. The script is present on any other object, so that if it leaves the gameplay area, it is destroyed. All right, next object is object moves towards target's position, fire and forget. Okay, so this is essentially the asteroid behavior. So for the asteroid controller, I get the direction it needs to go, which is towards the player on the start function, and save that. So the spaceship location minus where the asteroid spawns from. And then in the update function, it just adds in that direction times the movement speed that is specified in the editor. It never changes the direction. Throughout the code, I use time delta time on any of these rotations or movements just to keep it frame rate independent, so that if you lag, it doesn't jump or look weird. Alright, next item. Object moves towards target's position, heat seeking. So that would be the enemy ships. So here I just have a location every frame where the player is, and I calculate the direction it needs to move every frame. So I do that here. I plus equal the direction moved times the editor set speed, so that it always is moving towards the player. Alright, next item is random.range. I use random.range all over the place. A lot of it is in the spawning of items, so whenever I spawn a asteroid or enemy ship, I randomly pick a spawn location, which I actually pick an initial random spawn location out of the array, and then I iterate through them so that I don't accidentally spawn multiple things at the same location. But even within that, I have a random spot around that location within a unit circle, so that it's, even if it chooses that area, it's still going to be slightly random each time. When the background can have different planets display when you start the game, so I have it randomly pick both how many planets and which ones it will spawn. There's 3 possible location spots. It picks a random number and a random planet to put in that spot, and I do the random unit circle, so the position of the planets are always a little different, even if it picks the same spawn location. Alright, the next item is random inside unit circle. Okay, so yeah, I just displayed that. When I spawn the planets for the background, I'll get a little more randomness in that actual location by putting a unit circle, or adding it to that fixed location for both the planets in the background, as well as asteroids or enemy ships in the play area. Alright, next is destroy on collision. So yeah, that's where I kind of showed this earlier, but the collision, the projectile colliders, when they hit, destroy objects. I believe also when asteroids collide with other ships, they get destroyed, and when obviously when other ships collide with them, the player or a asteroid, it destroys those. So yeah, destroy is present in most of these controllers for when they run into things, even the projectiles. Okay, next item is destroy after delay lifespan. So I mainly used this functionality for when a object is destroyed, it spawns an explosion sprite, and I set those to just go away after a couple seconds. So my prefab for effects, I have an asteroid explosion, and it's exposing the inspector to be able to set a lifespan, and that's time destruction. That's just the script. It can be added to anything, but it just destroys the game object after a certain lifespan. Not only this, but the player, or any projectile fired, player or enemy, just takes a editor set bullet lifetime, and on its start function, it just sets the time ticking to when it will be destroyed. Use of instantiate. Yeah, that's pretty much everywhere as well, mainly in the game controller again. Instantiate asteroids and enemies, instantiate background planets. Whenever a projectile or a enemy ship or asteroid dies, they instantiate an explosion sprite. When the player dies, actually, I think the game controller instantiates that. Yeah, the game controller instantiates a explosion sprite when the player dies. When the player shoots, it instantiates a bullet in the direction it needs to. So yes, instantiate all over. Alright, the next thing is bug error free. So the only way I know how to show that is to just play the game and the console is visible. So just shooting, destroying things. Yeah, just making sure the functionality works and there's no errors or warnings in the code. Everything rotates, follows, destroy in my last life, and when I die, game over comes on. No errors. Alright, next thing is comments. So yeah, all of my scripts are commented, pretty much every line that does anything. I comment just to describe what it does. The main things are the game controller, which have all of the variables, what they do, and then it's pretty much game loop, how it works. The player controller, how movement is controlled, what each line does, and the enemy and asteroid controllers also with their movement and destruction. It's commented what happens and when. Alright, next item is project organization. So this project, it's pretty simple. I have a folder for art, which is broken up into different categories because it's kind of started getting to be a lot, so I didn't want it all in one directory. So there's my art prefabs, same deal. I split those up the same way the art was, just so it's easier to know where my prefabs are for everything. One scene again, and then scripts, not many scripts. Game exceeds minimum requirements. So I kind of had fun with this one, so I went into a little bit more functionality, mainly with what you see in the background. Oops. The background will randomly pick 1 to 3 planets out of 7 possible planets to spawn in the background. I also put a life, number of lives, UI element up here, and a score UI element up here. Every time you destroy a ship or an asteroid, you get a score. So whenever asteroids move, they have a random rotation amount. Ships that are in the world will fire bullets, but they will only fire bullets if you are not too close to them. So there's like a dead zone so that it's not like impossible to dodge. So if you just stay near them, they won't fire. But ones farther away will fire, like this guy to the right will fire. And all that is controllable in the editor. Dead zone, rate of fire, speed. Let's see what else. I also put a little exhaust graphic on the player ship. So they'll only enable if they're moving forward. And I added this game over screen as well. There's a couple other things. You can either press to shoot or you can hold to shoot. Oops. Oops. Yep. Let me think. Anything else? I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, I did a lot of custom parameters that are all set in the game controller, so all that can be edited and tinkered with to make it more fun to play, I guess. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next submission video.